Shalom. First and foremost, call halal yamla, Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem HaRachak Wadash. Double honors to the apostles, the bishops, and the elders of Great Millstone that I learned this truth from. And also peace and salutation to the hopeful elect of the nation of Israel, scattered throughout the four corners of the earth. And in this video, I'm going to be responding to an article, as you see here on the screen, from endtimeheadlines.org. It says AI Backlash has tech executives fearing for their lives. All right. And as it goes into a little bit, it says, according to a report from the Wall Street Journal, a surge in violent threats against artificial intelligence companies is forcing tech executives to confront real personal danger as public anger over the technology spills into physical incidents. All right. And pretty much as we've been seeing as of recently, you've been seeing a lot of backlash, mass protests, okay, throughout the country here and there of basically people standing up against the rising AI infrastructure that we see being built up all around America, Babylon the Great, okay, these AI data centers, right, these AI cameras, all right, and overall, the a lot of people around Babylon the Great, okay, are pretty much taking a stance, okay, cursing out this all of this AI technology that we see being built around the country, okay, all this AI and these data centers and AI infrastructure that this current government is investing billions of dollars into. Because remember, during Trump's first week back in office after his inauguration, he announced the launch of the Stargate project. Okay, where he had technocrats, all right, in his corner, as he was announcing the Project Stargate. Okay, which when we go into it, it's pretty much this current government investing $500 billion into increasing the AI infrastructure throughout America. More data centers, AI cameras, AI surveillance, all right, AI, within, censoring the internet and social media, okay. And so as we see as of lately, all right, a lot of these American people are, getting on the internet, speaking out against all this AI, cursing out, what these data centers are doing, pretty much sucking up all the water, sucking up all the electricity, causing people's electricity bills to go up, their water bills to go up, and it's just making their, everyday life here in America, Babylon the Great, harder and harder and worse for many people. Okay, and so pretty much, as the Esau and his technocrats are pretty much, throwing out the narrative that now, these executives and these people that are, building up these AI data centers and all this AI infrastructure, now they're the victims. Okay, despite how much these AI data centers are ruining the earth, sucking up the water, sucking up the electricity, and making people's everyday lives worse. All right, AI is the victim now. All right, showing you the witchcraft and the sorcery that Esau Edom is just continuing to push throughout the earth. Okay, constantly going throughout the earth, being the villain, destroying lives, pushing more, more corruption, disease, destroying the earth, right? But yet somehow, some way, he's able to use his witchcraft, his media, his sorcery to somehow, some way paint himself as a victim. You see? And even as of lately, and I even did a video on it as well a few months ago, where now Esau and these technocrats are pretty much getting ready to label anybody that's on the internet speaking out against AI as a terrorist, what they call anti-tech extremists. All right, and you already know anything that Esau labels as extreme or extremist, this, that, and the third, he's automatically going to accuse it, categorize it as something terroristic, right? Terroristic, okay? And and as we see, the particular executives of these AI companies are pushing a narrative that now they're fearing for their lives and that they're the victims because of people here in America pretty much starting to take a stance against all these AI data centers and AI infrastructure as a whole. Okay, and real quick, let's get second Ezra chapter 5. Okay, and this is speaking of end time prophecy. Second Ezra chapter 5 and verse 5, it says, "And blood shall drop out of wood, and the stone shall give his voice, and the people shall be troubled." All right, and when you go throughout prophecy throughout the scriptures, uh, a lot of times when you read scriptures that talks about wood and stone in the same verse, a lot of times it can be associated with idols, idol worship. Okay, because real quick, when you go to Deuteronomy 28, Deuteronomy 28, Deuteronomy 28 and 64. This is one of the curses that the Lord brought upon our people, Israel, so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, which we're still under the curses to this very day, just as we're in the land of our captivity to this very day. All right, Judah and Israel, all 12 tribes. Slakia says, Deuteronomy 28 verse 64 says, "And the Lord Yahweh shall scatter thee among all people from one end of the earth even unto the other." All right, and still to this very day, the true Israelites, so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, are scattered throughout the four corners of the earth. All right, to this day, the main bulk of the tribes are here in America, Babylon the Great. All right, the final land of our captivity. But in general, all Israel, okay, all 12 tribes are scattered throughout the earth. All right, according to prophecy, according to this curse that we're reading right here, right? But it says, in there, all right, amongst these nations that we will be scattered amongst, it says, "And there thou shalt serve other gods, idols, which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone." You see that? So, one of the curses, as we see right here, was that the Lord would scatter our people throughout the four corners of the earth, from one end of the earth to the other, and that what we will worship and serve other gods, idols, made out of wood and stone. Okay, because back in ancient times when these heathen would create idols, they would primarily make them out of wood, stone, gold, silver, different things out of the earth, right? But primarily wood and stone. See that? So wood and stone, okay, in the scriptures, especially when they're mentioned in the same verse, can be synonymous with idols. All right. And as a matter of fact, even when you go to let's get Habakkuk chapter 2 and verse 18, it says, What profiteth the graven image that the maker thereof hath graven it, the molten image and a teacher of lies, that the maker of his work trusted therein to make dumb idols?" Okay, verse 19, "Woe unto him that saith to the wood, Awake, and to the dumb stone, Arise." See that? So here we see again wood and stone being mentioned in the same verse, being associated with idols, idol worship. Okay? Habakkuk 2 and 19 again. "Woe unto him that saith to the wood, Awake, to the dumb stone, Arise, it shall teach. Behold, it is laid over with gold and silver, and there is no breath at all in the midst of it." You see, and here in these outer days, that this is what Esau Edom is doing with AI. AI is the new idol that Esau and the heathen are pushing heavily throughout the earth. Okay, and in times past, back in ancient times, idols would be made primarily out of wood, stone, gold, silver, things out of the earth, right? But they wouldn't be able to speak, they wouldn't be able to see, they wouldn't be able to smell, hear, right? They would just be dumb idols. Okay, just sitting there, sitting there, staring, okay, not moving, no life in them, no breath in them, right? But now we see here in these outer days, these heathen, led by Esau, Edom, are creating idols. It's like it. We see Esau, Edom, and these heathen now creating idols, all right, in the form of, AI, robots, okay, you know, and now these things are able to, teach. They're able to give, life advice, relationship advice, health advice, okay, telling you, giving you financial advice on, how much you should, spend on a house or a car or things like that, okay. Esau and these heathen have now, stepped up their idol creation game to where now idols are able to actually teach and speak, okay, move, walk, right, in the form of again the AI and these robots, right? But as the Lord said, okay, as the Lord said, there's no breath at all in the midst of it. Okay, these idols and these robots and AI that Esau and these heathen are creating, they're deceiving the world to make the world believe that these things are actual living, breathing things that are you know that can pretty much operate like humans. All right, but they're not humans. Okay, they're just simply idols. Okay, artificial creations, artificial intelligence, man-made intelligence, right? And just overall the work of men's hands. Just another modern forms of graven images. But teacher of lies, as you just said. You see that? Teachers of lies that Esau and his heathen are further using to bring forth confusion, deception. All right, and to pretty much start pretty much move this whole entire world into the NWO. You see that? But now, as we see, okay, there's a monkey wrench that's been thrown into the hands of these Edomites and these technocrats. Well, now people are pretty much starting to wake up to what this AI agenda is all about. Okay, and how AI is making their everyday lives worse and worse and worse. And how AI isn't making America great again. Right? A lot of people are losing jobs due to AI. Their water bills are going up due to these AI data centers. Their electricity bills, okay, they're being spied on and surveilled more. Through these AI cameras and speed cameras and whatnot. All right, and these American people are waking up more and more and realizing that AI isn't being used to make America great or to make their lives great again. It's ultimately being used to bring forth the police state. All right, that's been spoken about for years. Okay, by a lot of these truthers, and especially first and foremost by the men of the Lord. By the men of Yahweh Shemal Shai. Okay, all this AI that we're seeing is bringing forth the Orwellian, the dystopian police state that the elites of Esau Edom have been planning for decades. Okay, and all this stuff is going to be used to take away constitutional rights, and these American people are eventually going to snap, all right, and take it to the streets. But going back to Second Edges 5, in verse 5 again, it says, "And blood shall drop out of the wood, and the stone shall give his voice." Okay, so you can pretty much associate this with idol worship, all right, because we know obviously, blood doesn't, come out of wood trees, all right, nor do actual stones speak and talk and teach, all right, but instead, what is this ultimately speaking of? Idols, okay, and it says, "And the people shall be troubled," all right, great tribulation, right? Jacob's trouble, okay? And it says, verse 6, Perplexity is also a part of this as well. All right, and it says, verse 6, 2nd Ezra 5 and 6, and he shall and even he shall rule whom they look not for that dwell upon earth. Okay, and what can we associate that with? These technocrats, technocracy. All right, these AI being put as the forefront of how the world should be governed. Right, this modern day digital Tower of Babel system. Governed by technocrats and AI, and all being centered around the MOTB microchip. Okay, that's what the elites of Esau Edom are getting ready to set up to rule their NWO, technocrats and artificial intelligence. All right, all centered around the MOTB. It says again, verse 6, even he shall rule, okay, whom they look not for that dwell upon the earth. See that? Because, these American people, they didn't vote for, all this mass AI infrastructure that we see being built around America. They didn't vote for technocrats to, eventually take the helm of their so-called country, their precious America, in the near future. Okay, to accelerate the collapse of this American economy, this American system, this two-party political system. Okay, and bring forth a form of, unified party political system in the form of what? Technocrats, AI. These American people didn't vote for that. But guess what? This is what's coming down the pipe. Okay? As it said again, 2nd Ezra 5 verse 6. And even he shall rule whom they look not for that dwell upon earth. And the fowl shall take their flight away together. See that? So all of this stuff, this AI, AI infrastructure, technocracy, is all going to lead to troubles, great tribulation. Okay, and even as it continues to read down, the sodomite sea casting out fish, which represents what? Not only not only does it represent these AI data centers, sucking up all the water, causing fish to to dry up in the rivers and the lakes, okay, but also as well the sodomite sea, okay, which we know America, Babylon the Great, is the modern day Sodom in Egypt, pursuant to Revelation 11 verse 8, okay. But the sodomite sea casting out fish also, altogether in general just represents death, okay, more death, and that's what's going to come from this technocracy, okay, this AI technocracy that's being built up right before our eyes. More death, more tribulation, more perplexity, and it says, and the sodomite sea shall cast out fish and make a noise in the night. All right, which many have not known, but they shall all hear the voice thereof. Yeah, because all throughout the earth, rich and poor, free and bond, okay, are going to be you know you put in positions to obey this technocracy and this AI infrastructure that's being built up around them via what? Social credit systems. All right, full blown dystopian, Orwellian society. Okay, mass surveillance, 15-minute cities. Okay, surveillance drones all throughout the cities. You know, surveilling people. Making sure people aren't spending too much time outside of their 15-minute city zone or whatnot. Okay, making sure people aren't emitting too much carbon in the air. Okay, that's the voice that people are gonna be are gonna hear thereof, that they're gonna be forced to obey. You see that? And it's all gonna come via what? All this AI technocracy, okay, and AI infrastructure that we see being built up around us. Okay, that now people are rebelling against, and it's having a lot of these technocrats and these tech executives, okay, basically fearing for their lives. Okay, eventually they're gonna be running into the bunkers, right? And even as the scripture says in the book of Job 20, Job 20 and verse 22, it says, in the fullness of his sufficiency, okay, and mind you, what is Job 20 going into? All right, The triumph of the wicked is short. Who is the wicked? Esau, Edom, so-called white man, pursuant to Malachi 1 verse 4, where he's known by name as by Esau, Edom, all right, as the border of wickedness. You see that? So Job 20 in verse 22 again, it says, in the fullness of his sufficiency, all right, what's going to be the fullness of Esau's sufficiency when he attempts to establish his NWO agenda, okay, where he's going to have all humanity and all the Lord's creation on earth under one, digital grid, one digital system, all right, digital Tower of Babel like, one world order system, via AI, technocracy, all centered around the MOTB, microseop. It says, in the fullness of his sufficiency, he shall be in straits. Okay? So in the fullness of Esau attempting his NWO agenda, okay, he's going to be in straits, meaning what? The Lord is going to throw a monkey wrench in his plan. All right? And what's going to have these devils, these technocrats and these tech executives and these elites of Esau Edom in straits as they're going to attempt the fullness of their sufficiency, their NWO agenda. It says, every hand of the wicked shall come upon him. All right. And as the men of the Lord always, bring out, anytime we bring this verse out, this word wicked in Job 20, verse 22, as we always show, is Strong's H 6001. I'm all. And it means what? Laborer, sufferer, wretched one, laborer, workman, okay, toiling. All right, so it's talking about the laborer, the working man, basically the working class, okay, the middle class. See that? That's going to be the main, group of people, for lack of better words, that's going to be rebelling against all this AI infrastructure and technocracy that we see before us. The working class, the middle class, because especially if you've been keeping up, with the things happening around the world, and especially things happening around here in America, Babylon the Great, from 2020 up until now, from the C-19 to, this and that and the third and hyperinflation and all these wars and rumors of war that we've been seeing from 2020 up until now. At the end of the day, here in Babylon the Great, America especially, what class of people, for lack of better words, have been always getting the short end of the stick in the midst of all this wickedness that we've been seeing from especially 2020 till now, is the middle class, the working class. People losing businesses, people losing houses, being forced to foreclose their homes or, be evicted out of their apartments, people losing jobs, due to various reasons, whether it be layoffs, okay, reduction of force, all right, and as well as we've been seeing over the past year and a half, people losing jobs due to AI. AI is taking a lot of these jobs. So therefore, what? It's pretty much leaving the middle class out to dry more and more. And as we see right here in Job 20 verse 22, okay, when Esau attempts to fulfill his sufficiency, his NWO agenda, he's going to be in straits, okay, in a difficult situation. Because what? Every hand of the wicked, okay, the working class, the middle class, all right, the laborer, is going to be upon him. Okay, people are going to be, rebelling, taking it to the streets, going after these technocrats and these tech executives, right? And people are going to crash out as, people are seeing more and more where all of this AI, infrastructure and, all this technocracy is going, okay, here in Babylon the Great. Tech is getting ready to slowly but surely chipping away at people's constitutional rights. It's slowly but surely taking away their rights for people to just be human, period, right? It's already taken away from people's jobs, okay? And very soon all this AI is going to take over the government, all right? And it's going to cause people to pretty much snap and take it to the streets, okay? Slakia. And you best believe, okay, Job 20 verse 22, all right, where it talks about every hand of the wicked, The working class laborer shall be upon him. All right. You better believe that links up with the second Ezra 15. Okay, which you already know. You already know where I'm going. Second Ezra 15 and verse 14 it says, "Woe to the world and them that dwell therein, for the sword and their destruction draweth nigh, and one people shall stand up and fight against another, and swords in their hands." All right, and of course, what's the modern day sword? All right, firearms, the gun, pistols, shotguns, assault rifles, semi-automatics. Okay, and mind you, when you look around at America compared to other countries throughout the earth, okay, the United States of America has the most legally armed citizens, all right, throughout any other country throughout the world, and of course a lot of that is due to the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, okay, and mind you as well, when you go into the purpose of the Second Amendment, when you go deep into it, pretty much the purpose of the Second Amendment was to allow the American citizens to arm themselves, all right, and defend themselves, okay, especially against government overreach. Pretty much when the American people would suspect the government to try to take away their rights or take away their so-called freedoms, right? The Second Amendment is there to allow American citizens to legally bear arms, own firearms and whatnot, to pretty much stand up and defend themselves even against their own government. You see that? And guess what? And we're getting ready to see that very idea play out in 2026 going forward, as these American people, especially the Edomite American, he's seeing how all this AI and technocracy, okay, they're slowly but surely seeing that their guy Trump, wasn't put in office for their best interests. He was ultimately put in office to further do the bidding of the elites, okay, the elite banking families of Esau, Edom. And so, as these American citizens, especially the American Edomite, is waking up to that more and more, what you think the average Edomite is going to resort to, okay, as they see that their precious America crumbling right before their eyes, all right, under their so-called beloved president. He's gonna lean to his blessing, the sword. Okay, Second Ezra 15 verse 15 again it says, "For the sword and their destruction draweth nigh, and one people shall stand up and fight against another, and swords in their hands." Okay, modern day sword being a gun, firearms. All right, and these American citizens have plenty of them. Okay, the most out of any country throughout the earth. All right, and that's not done by coincidence, because ultimately that's done by Yahweh Shema Shai to fulfill prophecy. Okay, verse 16, "And there should be sedition among men." All right, what is sedition? Okay, there should be sedition among men. What does the word sedition mean? It means sedition is the act of inciting or promoting rebellion, disorder, or resistance against a lawful government. You know, point blank, period. It says it typically involves words, speeches, or organizations intended to undermine established authority or persuade others to overthrow the government, but falls just short of the actual violence seen as an insurrection. Okay, and that's what it's all going to lead to. All right, as AI is being put at the forefront of life here in America. Okay, it's getting ready to take over the government. It's already taking jobs. It's getting ready to take over the economy. It's getting ready to take away all these American people's rights. Hey, it's going to push these American people more and more into sedition and ultimately insurrection. Okay, full blown rebellion against their own government. Right? It says again, Second Ezra 16, Second Ezra 15, verse 16. "For there shall be sedition among men, and invading one another. They shall not regard their kings nor princes, and the course of their actions shall stand in their power. Hey, and that's where this place is all leading to. Okay, a second Ezra, 15 verse 14 on down. Okay, it's all going to fulfill, what we read earlier in Job 20 verse 22. Okay, and the fullness of Esau's sufficiency is going to be in straits, because what? Every hand of the wicked, the Imal, the working class, the workman, the toiler, is going to be upon him. All right, sedition, insurrection, people, practicing their Second Amendment rights, taking it to the streets. Okay, just full blown rebelling against their own government, rebelling against these AI data centers and all this AI infrastructure that's being built up around them. Okay, and try to so-called take their country back and take their so-called freedoms back. All right, and hey, this is the chaos and the tribulation that Yahweh Shemel Shai is brewing up more and more here in the Babylon the Great, according to prophecy. Okay, these things must come to pass. All right, hey, real quick, let's get real quick. Second Ezra, the fourth chapter. Second Ezra 4 and verse 29. It says, "If therefore that which is sown be not turned upside down." Okay, and what is it that which is sown, which is currently sown right now? Babylon the Great. Okay, America. It says, "If therefore that which is sown be not turned upside down, and if the place where the evil is sown pass not away," meaning what? If Babylon the Great, America, isn't ultimately destroyed, right? Then cannot it come that is sown with good, all right? And that which is sown as good is talking about the kingdom. So basically, what this verse is speaking to right here is that if Babylon the Great, America, the place that's currently sown right now, isn't turned upside down, meaning what? If all hell doesn't break loose in this place, okay? If sedition doesn't take place in this place, if chaos doesn't come to pass here in America, perplexity, famine, great death, great sorrows, great tribulation, pestilence, okay, all the judgments and the scourges of amendment that Yahweh Shema Shah spoke of that's going to happen in this place. Okay, if America, Babylon the Great, isn't turned upside down, okay, and going into full blown anarchy, and ultimately, if this place doesn't pass away and be destroyed by nuclear missiles and World War III, then basically then the kingdom can't come. Okay, so showing you that, hey, before the kingdom of heaven is established, Babylon the Great, America, must be destroyed. It must pass away by way of fire, from Yahweh Shema Shai, point blank period. Okay, but before the fire comes upon this place, Yahweh Shema Shai is going to turn this place upside down. Okay, and what's an example, as we read through our prophecy, that's going to turn this place upside down? Okay, sedition. All right, every hand of the working class, the workman, is going to be upon Esau, Edom. All right, and his technocrats and his elites. Okay, and these tech executives and all this AI that they're trying to build up here in America. Okay, these American people taking it to the streets and crashing out is going to be one of the main things that's going to turn this place upside down. You see that? So wait, things have to continue to get worse in Babylon the Great, America. All right, and AI is going to be a major part of things getting worse and worse and worse, bringing forth more death, more sorrows, more tribulation, more hell. Okay, more surveillance. All right, because these things must come to pass for Babylon the Great, America, to pass away by way of fire. So that what? So that the place that's sown in good, which is the kingdom, all right, upon the return of Yahweh Shai, can be established on the earth. You see that? So so with that, Lord willing, this video is edifying. And until next time, shalom.